welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another exciting and deeply meaningful conversation with a fantastic guest. Our conversation today is going to be about collaboration and why collaboration is needed, both in our personal lives and professional lives, so that we can live it intentionally, so that we are happy and we have peace and we're successful. You may ask, what has that got to do with Goldilocks? The entire theme of Goldilocks is about how to get things just right. How do we show up in a way that we're not too hard, not too soft, not too hot, not too cold? What is that middle ground, and that from that centeredness we're able to attract and influence? And research shows that if we are coming from an extreme position of this is my perspective and everybody has to get along and believe in it and do what I see and what I believe is right, at that extreme end, I can only influence 3 levels from where I am. That means only 3 levels towards the center being the key word. If I'm on the extreme end of the other side of the spectrum, extreme left, I still can only influence 3 levels towards the center. But what if I take perspective and move to the middle, somewhere in the middle? Left, right, off center is fine. It doesn't have to be dead center. From that centeredness space, I can influence 3 levels to my right, 3 levels to my left, and everybody else in my centeredness. So I have 7 degrees of influence, with the fact that we can only influence 3 levels from where we are, right? So all of a sudden, research is proving to us, when we get to that perspective taking and can collaborate with others and can understand others and come from that place of being willing to listen and figure things out together, our impact is greater. So in our most selfish moments, if we want success, we need to move to the middle. And today's conversation in terms of collaboration is going to be exactly from that place of centeredness. How do we influence and step out to the world and be the purpose we are meant to be, and then drive progress? And to have this conversation with me is a long-term professional colleague and somebody I now consider a friend, Dorothea Stoll. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Hi, Cass. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Such an absolute delight to have you. You and I have worked together, and we've worked together in very dynamic and complex business environments.
Yes.
I want us to take a step back into your own personal professional world. You come from fintech, technology-based integration, technology-based transformation. Where along the way did you come to the realization of collaboration, and how has collaboration helped you be successful?
It's a very good question, right? I think we should all ask ourselves that. Let me start by saying that collaboration is a mindset. It is not an intellectual gift we are born with. Some of us have it instinctually. It can be learned, right? So collaboration builds trust. It builds from trust, it builds engagement. And from engagement, it leads to synergies if you have effective collaboration. And a synergy is one of the most important organizational strengths, whether it's a business, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's a church, wherever, a family. Synergy is one of those things that if you have group engagement, there's nothing like it. There's no strength as powerful, as purposeful, as positive and empowering as synergy, drawing from effective collaboration. And if you've ever been in a synergistic group, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And forever after, you'll be looking to rebuild that wherever you go. And so if I go back in my career, I've had many points where this type of collaboration has led to that kind of engagement, has led to that kind of synergy and success. When we can't develop that kind of engagement and synergy, it can lead to failure, right? So it's very, very important that we are able to build the process of collaboration. And that process of collaboration starts with step one, reaching out. And then it becomes a cycle of reaching out, of responsiveness back. And of course, in that first cycle, there's a bilateral here, right? So for our purposes, we're going to assume there is engagement, that there is responsiveness back and forth, that we have that loop going. It doesn't always happen. And sometimes we don't have engagement, right? Sometimes we don't have collaboration then. And we know what the impact of that is as well on our efforts.
Absolutely. And that is so important for us to remember, right? We have to work at it, but we may not always get it, because if everybody doesn't show up wanting it, we might miss it by just a hair, right?
Yes.
There are certain things that need to be in place for collaboration to happen, like people willing to listen to each other, people willing to respect each other, people willing to build relationships and connections with each other. What have you seen as success factors to get to the point of collaboration?
Yeah. Cass, first of all, there's transparency, right? There's transparency. You walk in to an environment, you have to create the transparency. If you can be put in a position of leadership, you can be put in a position where you need to have that collaboration, right? And so in that role, you have to come, you said, listen, right? That's a very important factor. Transparency. How do you build trust? You build it step by step through a listening feature, through transparency, through openness, through engaging. And then from that is when you get others to buy in, right? Common goals are very, very important. In every group, you can come across people that are not maybe ready to engage, right? They may have their own agenda, right? There's political environments, there are personal agendas that can impact the success of collaboration. One of the very important things when you find a situation like that is to evaluate what common goals do you have that you can build upon. You may not always or ever see eye to eye with everyone, right? We know that. It's never a 100%. But the important thing is to start from a foundation of common shared goals that everyone wins. It becomes a win-win story. And that's the key. That's one of the keys and cornerstones to collaboration, right? And to engagement.
That's very insightful. That's very insightful. But some people are afraid to let their guard down. They show up to work with all their walls up, and they consider work transactional, and therefore they don't need to actually engage.
Right.
When we run into that in workplace, there is a way to deal with it. Sometimes in personal relationships that happens. Sometimes even in marriages that happens. So any words of wisdom in terms of how to deal with it for the others?
Yeah, words of wisdom. I believe when we encounter situations like that, patience is an incredibly strong factor to bring in to the equation, right? And consistency, right? Consistency in approach. When you have someone that does not want to engage, right? Forcing a person isn't going to happen, isn't going to make it happen, right? There has to be discipline, there has to be a consistency. And I also believe people, when they're wary to begin with, they have to be shown how it can work. right? So patience is required to just to manage through that situation, but you have to start showing maybe some wins, some, some things that get that person or that group to buy in. Yeah, there's credibility, right? Credibility becomes really important. And the more credibility you can build, the more likely that they will look at joining, if it's, especially if there's a personal agenda here from a professional perspective, um, they'll be far more likely to put their lot in with yours if it looks like there's credibility and it's growing and it's going in the right direction. Hitch their
Very well
wagon to
said.
yours, right?
Very
But you
well
have
said.
but you have to get them there. And how do you get them there? Right? They're, yeah. It's just moving down the road and bringing them along with you.
And you've done this. So why
Yeah.
don't you share an example of stepping into one of your projects? And not everybody on the project, not everybody on the project is from your own organization or your own team. Share an illustrative lived experience of how you have helped facilitate the creation of collaboration and drive the project to success.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Cass, years ago, I've been in a lot of transformation roles, right? And transformation roles from the get-go, there is a wariness to the person that's stepping into a transformation role, right? Because they're out to get you or things are changing. There are a lot of dynamics out there. And it's one of the most challenging positions to be in, to get people to align, to get people to engage, to get people to collaborate. So, I was leading the transformation of finance and accounting I was with a global pharmaceutical at the time. And we were going through a finance transformation. And I had to take an entire group, and not only did an entire group, but I had to work through as we know in transformation, we also, our end goal was to outsource. And so that means taking a large team and making it a smaller team, making a retained organization out of it, and then outsourcing the final is the end goal. And bringing that part of the organization that stays with you along with you and building trust when from the outset people don't know whether they have a job or not. I think that was one of the more challenging roles I've had, where I've had to get the retained organization to rally around what it was that we needed to bring across the finish line and collaborate in a very positive way. So it was a process of taking that organization, splitting it, bringing the retained organization along. Everyone had their roles and responsibilities. We had to draft all of that. We had to work that all out. And then we had to work with the outsourcer ultimately to take over what was being left behind. And at the end of the day, through a lot of collaborative work, we honed a very fine group of professionals in the global part of my organization that I can say was a very successful team that took this forward for years.
So the lessons learned you have been able to apply in every subsequent project because you're learning how to influence
Correct.
people, how to bring people together.
Correct.
What are 2 or 3 of the roadblocks you've run into in building this kind of a team so that cohesively you can work, solve problems, and then leave the place a little better, but there are going to be people who are going to be left behind too. That's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So clearly one of the first roadblocks is the people that aren't coming along, right? And how do you manage that? How do you keep morale with the group that is remaining and manage through with the other group so that they are respected, they feel respected, especially because there are relationships across that divide, right? So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge is quite often we've got senior leadership that isn't quite aligned with the program, right? So maybe they've got their own agenda and what they're working with isn't necessarily what you're working with. So you have to bridge that gap, right? Because you have to bring that senior leadership along as well. They have to become the champion for this, right? So they have to believe in what's happening, and at the same time, they have to support you through this type of exercise that's ongoing. And a transformation, something like this, doesn't happen in 1 year. This is a multi-year event, right? So you are building from the ground up, and you have to build for the long term. And so again, it goes back to, it requires a lot of discipline, consistency, and putting the right people in the right places, the right collaborative attitude. And again, it's global. So you're not only dealing with a team that's right there in front of you, you're dealing with people that are in far-flung places. You know, those of us who've worked in global, we know exactly what that means, because it adds another level of complexity to the entire collaborative effort.
Absolutely. I totally hear what you're saying. And if people want to talk to you about working on transformational projects, how do you build the right collaboration? How do you build it and drive it for success when some have to be left behind? Because that's the biggest challenge in this whole process. How can they best get a hold of you?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my LinkedIn profile. Okay. My LinkedIn is
we'll make sure that that's shared with this release. So happy to do that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dorothea. Let's take a moment and open this up to our live audience to see if they have any questions. Two, we see you here as our live audience member. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks. Do you have any thoughts, questions as you hear Dorothea speak about collaboration?
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Dorothea has shared today. And I echo everything that she's discussed through the positive aspects of bringing about collaboration, as well as the roadblocks and how to overcome them. And I was one of the very lucky ones in the past who have worked with her. One of the most challenging projects, if you will, and it has to do with the merger with Heinz. And at the time, 80% of us on the program were going to be on our way out. Yeah. And we had to put our heart and soul into a successful merger of Kraft and Heinz, with our hearts broken. So Dorothea was one of the leaders that I had the honor of working with and collaborating with amongst cross-functional teams that may not have all of their hearts and intentions dedicated to the success of the program. And as a leader, you have to bring the best out of everyone, despite the circumstances. And Dorothea, you remember, those were hard days, and we've overcome them despite in spite of everything. And I remember the successes that we had, and I truly treasure those days working together.
Yeah, too. I do. I absolutely remember those days. That was a huge effort. It was a huge effort.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights too. We appreciate you very much. And thank you for being a part of the Goldilocks live audience.
Thank you for having me. And it's an honor to have come to your introduction. And Dorothea, thank you very much for introducing me. I feel like from reading your posts and from participating in this podcast, I feel like there's a whole world out there from you and Dorothea that I could still learn, because I do recognize what my strengths are, but I do also know what I need to work on. And so I look forward to building and developing a relationship. And Dorothea, as always, I love you. I love you to death.
So we learn every day, right? The lucky ones. We are the lucky ones. We get to learn every day.
Yes.
That is the secret to a happy life, right? Every day you live and breathe, you learn something new. then
Right.
you get to keep your childlike wonderment and curiosity. The minute you lose it,
You know,
what's
I
the-
love that you say live and breathe, because I do sometimes say one of my weaknesses that I'm still trying to work on is that when I get so focused in everything that I'm thinking about and doing, that I actually forget to breathe physically. So, you know, living and breathing, you know, cannot be one-dimensional.
It's
So
fundamental.
fundamental,
It's
and
fundamental.
sometimes my husband Mike will say too.
very much so. We have to live a three-dimensional life fully present. Thank you
Yes.
so much for sharing those perspectives too. And Dorothea, as we bring this to a close, if you were to give young people entering the workforce some tips on how to be successful professionally, because the young people look at the world very differently and the way they engage in the world are very different. You have a daughter, you know what I'm talking about. What
Yeah.
advice would you have for the young people?
So, Cass, and I'm going to say too as well, when we were little, right? We were always admonished, encouraged to play nicely together, to not hurt each other, to be fair, to be kind, not just nice, because there's a difference between nice and kind, right? Kind is the extra step. Somewhere along the way, as we grow up, that kind of falls away, right? That encouragement isn't there anymore. So, you know, as we grow up and as we move into the workforce, remembering how important it is to be kind to others, to be kind to yourself, and then be kind to others, to be open to take on new opportunities because of the learning that comes from them, right? And not just expect something to be handed to you, but to work for it. There's a lot of learning that comes from something that you have to really pull your, put your sleeves up and jump into and really dig at. There's a lot of good learnings that come from that. So look for those opportunities, look for the people that are positive, and be open and be encouraging to others. Bring others along with you. For women, it's very, very important, right? For women, it's extremely important to open those doors for other women, to not close them behind us as we move up, because that happens a lot, and unfortunately, right? So we want to make sure from that female perspective, we've got the door remaining open for others to follow.
Excellent advice and excellent way of the road guidance. Dorothea, it is so true. Women, because of the scarcity environment women are in the professional world, it's very natural and normal as a woman walks through the door, she turns around and shuts it. Right?
Yeah.
And that
Sometimes
has,
not even thinking, right? Not even thinking that you're not even realizing that you're doing that, but yes.
and the single most important thing for us to remember is, as a undervalued population in the workforce, we get our power not singularly. We get our power collectively. How do we harness that collective power, and how do we show up for each other and stand up for each other and amplify each other's voice? Those are critical moments that are going to create our success, and we're
Correct.
never going to make it on our own, right?
That's right.
And allyship with men who are going to be supportive are equally important.
100%. You know, that brings us right back to where we started. Collaboration, right? It's the collaborative mindset that gets us there, based on shared goals, common goals.
Without a doubt.
Transparency, respect, all of that goes with it.
So thank you so much for making the time and engaging in this important conversation of collaborating in the face of business relationships and business strategy that is not always going to have a positive outcome. Regardless of the outcome, how do we collaborate so that the mission is accomplished even when the outcome is not to our advantage. And there is a huge difference in understanding that and showing up for it instead of always saying, if it benefits me, I'll show up, right? So thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for the example you shared with us to give a lived moment for others to relate to. And to our audience out there, our listeners, our community members, take a page from Dorothea's experience and guidance and build your own collaborative journey. Build it intentionally and build it in a way that you're examining your mindset and making those incremental changes every day. Life doesn't happen in spurts, it happens in a continuum. Take that continuous journey, surround yourself with people who can reinforce that for you. And feel free to reach out to our guest Dorothea today if you need some additional insights, but collaborate and find ways to grow through that collaboration, because that is going to not just determine your success, it is going to determine your happiness, your peace of mind, and ultimately give you your place in this world the way you were intended to have it.